"You don't touch the flag," the tomb guard said, his voice low and unwavering, slicing through the airport's chaos. Travelers froze. Phones lowered. The manager's hand hovered awkwardly above the casket's stars and stripes. To the crowd, it was just another delay, an inconvenience in a busy terminal. But to Sergeant Samuel Harper, it was a line nobody crossed. Not for schedules, not for convenience, not ever. What the manager and the onlookers didn't know was that the promise driving Harper today was forged in blood, under a desert sky. The soldier in that casket had saved his life. And the real shock was on its way, wearing the stripes of a general determined to set things right. Welcome to the Old Guard Watch. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. If these stories resonate with you, hit subscribe. Tomorrow we have another special story coming your way. In the heart of Washington, D.C.'s International Airport, travelers rushed toward their gates. Announcements droned overhead, but one man stood still. Sergeant Samuel Harper, a tomb guard of Arlington's unknown soldier, wore his uniform like a vow. White gloves, shoes polished to a mirror shine, and the tomb guard's badge gleaming on his chest. His face was composed, eyes fixed forward, but beneath the scarlet and black, a heavy weight pressed against his heart. Today, his duty wasn't at the tomb, but here in the chaos, to escort a fallen brother home. Private First Class Daniel Walsh, just 25, had once laughed under desert stars, shared stories of home, and made a promise with Sam. "If I don't make it, bring me home right." 3 days ago, that promise became real. Danny was gone, killed in a classified mission in the Middle East. Now, his flag-draped casket waited on the tarmac, and Sam would not let him down. Every step today was for Danny, the boy who loved baseball, dreamed of flying, and died saving his squad. Across the terminal, Margaret Walsh, Maggie to her friends, stood with her granddaughter Emma. At 70, Maggie's face bore the lines of a military nurse who'd seen too many wars, from Vietnam to today. Her son Danny was her pride, her light. Now, she clutched Emma's small hand, waiting to say goodbye. Emma, just 10, looked up with wide eyes. "Grandma, is that Danny's plane?" she asked, her voice soft but piercing. Maggie nodded, her throat too tight for words. She'd sent her husband to war, then her son. Now she was here to bring him home. But not everyone saw the weight of this moment. In an office above the terminal, James Thornton, the airport's operations manager, tapped impatiently at his tablet. A 98% on-time departure rate was his obsession, his badge of honor. Certificates of efficiency lined his walls. Digital screens tracked every flight and delay. A military procession through the main concourse. Unacceptable. "We can't have this," he muttered to his assistant, Sarah. "Why wasn't I told earlier? The service corridors exist for a reason. Get it rerouted." Sarah cleared her throat. "Sir, the airport director approved the main concourse route." Thornton's jaw tightened. "This airport runs on precision, not pageantry," he snapped, already calculating the minutes lost during the peak 2:30 rush. 19 departures in that window. Every second counted. Back in arrivals, Sam stood like a pillar against the polished floor. Travelers rushed past. Some snapping photos of his striking uniform, others too busy to notice. His mind drifted back to 3 days ago, to the commanding officer's office, the folded letterhead, the words that made his stomach drop. Private First Class Daniel Walsh, killed in action. Then the assignment. "You've been selected for escort duty, Sergeant. Bring him home." Sam's fingers brushed the photograph in his breast pocket, worn soft from years of handling. It showed him and Danny, arms slung around each other, grinning under a desert moon. They'd met in basic training, two opposites thrown together. Danny was all heart, quick to laugh, quick to act. Sam was the compass, always calculating, always steady. "You think too much, Sam," Danny would tease. "Sometimes you just have to feel it." Their rivalry became respect, then brotherhood, forged in the crucible of war. Afghanistan tested them. Danny's laughter was a lifeline in the barracks, a shield against the tension. Sam stayed in the background, watching, planning. "You're my compass, Sam," Danny had said one quiet night, stars bright above their outpost. I lead the charge, but you make sure we're heading right. Those words settled deep in Sam's chest, becoming part of him. Their third tour changed everything. An ambush, sudden, brutal. Gunfire, shouts, and Danny's voice. Sam, on your left. Danny tackled Sam to the ground as bullets tore through the air. 3 seconds that saved Sam's life. That night, as medics patched them up, Danny brushed it off. Thanks. That's what brothers do, he said, but his eyes held a shadow, a glimpse of mortality. Months later, Danny spoke more about home. His mother, Maggie, who sent care packages. His little sister, Emma, who mailed crayon drawings to Uncle Danny the hero. He carried her artwork in his helmet, a talisman against the darkness. The night before his final mission, they sat outside their barracks, the air heavy with premonition. If anything happens, Danny said, his usual grin gone, bring me home proper. Full honors through the main concourse, not some back exit. Dad would have wanted it done right. Sam nodded, the weight of the promise sinking in. I'll make sure of it, Danny. No matter what. 3 days later, the news came. Danny hadn't returned. Details were sparse and classified. Sam stood alone in the barracks, the photograph in his hand. The promise no longer a what if, but a duty. Now, at the airport, as the transport plane taxied closer, that promise burned in his chest. The aircraft door opened with a mechanical hiss, and the honor guard emerged, movements precise, deliberate. The flag-draped casket appeared, stars and stripes stark against the terminal's gray. Ground crew removed their caps, heads bowed. Sam took his place beside the casket, his scarlet uniform aflame against the cold efficiency around him. James Thornton strode through the terminal, clipboard clutched like a shield. We'll use the service corridors, he told his staff as they hurried toward the arrivals hall. It's efficient, won't disrupt thousands of passengers. The military can have their ceremony at the cemetery. Sarah, a young security officer, hesitated. Sir, the director approved the main concourse route. Thornton waved her off. I'm responsible for this terminal. We don't stop for parades. The procession began. Each step measured, dignified, challenging the frantic pace around them. Travelers slowed, sensing something sacred. An elderly man nodded respectfully. A group of teenagers whispered. A businessman checked his watch, then paused, caught by the sight. Sam's face remained composed, but the photograph in his pocket anchored him. This was about Danny, about a debt that transcended schedules. Thornton approached before the procession reached the terminal doors. Sergeant, he said, voice low. I've prepared an alternative route. He unfolded a map, pointing to a highlighted path. These service corridors lead directly to the pickup area. It's faster. Sam's response was immediate, unwavering. This is Private First Class Daniel Walsh, United States Army. We will proceed through the main terminal as arranged, at the appropriate pace for escorting the fallen. Thornton leaned closer, tone sharper. These corridors were designed for movements that shouldn't disrupt operations. Shouldn't disrupt? Sam echoed, eyes hardening. Private Walsh will be escorted with full honors through the main terminal. Thornton jabbed at the map. There's a service elevator to the loading area. You'd avoid delaying thousands of passengers. The disruption is temporary, Sam said, voice steady. The dishonor of skulking through back corridors would be permanent. Thornton's composure cracked. He signaled Sarah. This is absurd. Airport protocols supersede your parade. Sarah approached, hand on her radio, but her eyes fell on the casket, the flag catching sunlight from a nearby window. Her hand dropped. Is there a problem? She asked. Yes, Thornton snapped. We need this procession redirected for operational reasons. Sarah looked at the casket, then at the growing crowd of onlookers. Sir, the director approved this route. I don't see an operational issue justifying a change. Thornton flushed. I'm responsible for this terminal. These delays cascade through the system. The crowd was larger now. Their silence formed a pocket of reverence in the bustling terminal. An elderly man in a USMC cap stepped forward. "I served in Vietnam," he said, voice rough but clear. "I lost brothers who never came home. This soldier deserves better than a back hallway." His words rippled through the crowd. A businessman pocketed his phone. A mother whispered to her curious child. A flight attendant stopped mid-stride. Maggie Walsh moved closer, Emma clutching her hand. "My Danny," Maggie said, voice trembling but strong. "He loved baseball, dreamed of flying planes. He died saving his squad. He deserves this honor." The terminal grew quieter, the weight of her words sinking in. Thornton, undeterred, stepped forward, hand raised to halt the procession. "Sergeant, I'm ordering you to redirect." Sam's gaze didn't waver. "There are regulations older than your airport," he said. "They govern how we honor those who gave everything. Lieutenant Walsh died serving his country in full view of the world. He will not be hidden in death." Thornton's hand brushed the edge of the flag, a ripple passing through the fabric. A collective gasp rolled through the crowd. Time seemed to collapse. Sam moved with fluid precision, his hand closing around Thornton's wrist, gentle but firm. "Don't touch the flag," he said, voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying through the hushed terminal. The words were a truth unyielding, rooted in centuries of military honor. Thornton's face registered shock, then indignation. "Take your hands off me," he hissed. "This is assault. I'll have security escort you." The crowd's silence deepened. George Miller removed his cap, placing it reverently over his heart. A flight attendant wiped away a tear. A businessman closed his laptop, his expression solemn. What Thornton failed to understand was that touching the flag was more than a simple mistake. It was a desecration, an insult to Danny, his family, and every soldier who had served. Sam held Thornton's wrist for 3 seconds before releasing it, his face betraying no emotion. Veterans in the crowd recognized the restraint, the deep sense of betrayal carefully suppressed beneath his calm exterior. The flag represents a soldier's dedication and sacrifice. Sam's voice was steady despite the emotion beneath. "It is not to be touched by anyone outside the honor guard." Thornton rubbed his wrist, defiance flickering in his eyes. "This is my terminal," he said, his voice lower now. "I determine how military personnel are authorized to protect the flag and casket from desecration." Sam cut in, his tone final and unwavering. "Our actions are guided by protocols older than your position or this airport." The crowd's reverence grew palpable. Travelers stood motionless, many bowing their heads as if the terminal had transformed into hallowed ground. "That's Danny's flag," came a small voice from the edge of the crowd. Emma Walsh, perched in her grandmother's arms, pointed at the casket, her words slicing through the tension. Maggie held her tighter, her weathered face a map of grief and pride. Her eyes met Sam's in a silent acknowledgement of shared loss. Captain Evelyn Carter, the airport director and a retired Army officer, approached with measured steps. Though dressed in civilian clothes, her bearing was unmistakably military. Her eyes took in the scene, the honor guard, the tense Thornton, the casket at the center of this unexpected standoff. "Mr. Thornton," she said quietly but firmly, "step aside." Turning to Sam, her tone softened. "Sergeant, my apologies. Your procession will continue through the main terminal as planned." Thornton began to protest, clutching his clipboard, but Carter silenced him with a raised hand. She understood what Thornton could not, that some moments transcend metrics, that traditions carry a weight no efficiency report could measure. She took the terminal's microphone, her voice echoing through the vast space. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention? A fallen soldier is being escorted through our terminal today. As a sign of respect, we ask that you join us in forming a corridor of honor for his final journey home." The terminal transformed. Travelers who had been rushing to their gates stopped, deliberately moving to the edges of the concourse. Businessmen closed laptops mid-email. Parents gathered their children, whispering about sacrifice. Airport staff abandoned their posts, lining the path. The chaotic terminal became a solemn passage. The businessman who had complained about delays now stood with his head bowed. A teenage girl slipped her phone into her pocket, eyes wide with understanding. George Miller stood straighter, his hand rising in a precise salute. An elderly man in a wheelchair rose, supported by his wife, his trembling hand finding his brow. The procession resumed, Sam leading at its head, the flag a beacon through the corridor of respect. Not a word was spoken, not a phone raised. Even the terminal's announcements seemed to hush, as if the building itself held its breath. Sam's face remained impassive, but his eyes carried a new light, an acknowledgement that his stand had made a difference. Sam's gaze swept across the crowd and met Maggie's. No words were exchanged, none were needed. In that silent glance lay a promise kept, honor upheld, and sacrifice recognized. Maggie nodded once. A soldier's acknowledgement passed from one generation to the next. Outside, the hearse waited, its black surface gleaming in the afternoon sun. The honor guard carefully placed Danny's casket inside, the flag still vibrant against the gray tarmac. Maggie and Emma approached. Emma clutched a single daisy, her small hand trembling slightly. Maggie took Sam's hand, her grip firm despite her years. "You kept your promise, Sam," she said, tears brimming but held back. Sam reached into his pocket and pulled out the worn photograph of him and Danny laughing beneath a desert moon. He pressed it gently into Maggie's hand. "For you, Maggie. For Emma." Emma stepped forward and placed the daisy on the casket. "You're my hero, Danny," she whispered, her soft voice breaking the heavy silence. Travelers watched from a distance, some wiping away tears, others standing in quiet tribute. Thornton approached, his clipboard forgotten, his head bowed. "Sergeant, I was wrong," he murmured, voice barely audible. "I didn't understand." Sam met his eyes and nodded silently, a quiet forgiveness. The hearse pulled away, carrying Danny on his final journey to Arlington. Sam's salute held steady until the vehicle disappeared from sight, his posture unwavering despite the weight of the moment. What began as a bureaucratic standoff had become something profound, a reminder that some traditions endure because they speak to our deepest need to honor sacrifice with dignity. That night, Sam returned to the tomb of the unknown soldier. Under a starlit sky, he paced his watch 21 steps, a pause, then 21 steps again. The wind whispered around him, carrying the weight of his duty, a solemn reminder that some promises outlast time itself. In a world that rushes forward, some stand still to honor those who gave everything. Let us remember them, not just in silence, but in the courage to stand for what is right. For Danny, for every soldier who never came home, and for those who keep their promises no matter the cost. This is the story of a tomb guard and a fallen soldier, of a crowded airport in Washington, D.C., of a photograph and a promise that held fast against the rush of time. It's a reminder that at the tomb of the unknown soldier, where every step is measured and every salute sacred, the greatest tribute to the fallen is standing firm for their honor. So pause today. Think of Sam, of Danny, of the countless heroes whose names we carry in silence. Share their story not just to honor them, but to remind us all that duty is not just in the act, but in the heart that refuses to forget. And if you ever find yourself at Arlington, stand before the tomb, watch the guard's steady pace, and listen. You might just hear the pulse of a nation, strong and unbroken through the weight of sacrifice.